Hi, my name is Ethan Hall, and this is my portfolio submission to University of Central Florida's game development program, FIEA. I chose the prototype as my portfolio project, and specifically I made a procedural level generator with the intent of making Zelda-esque dungeon layouts. So let's just get right into it. I've had this idea for a little while now, but I wasn't sure exactly how to execute it. I wanted the generator to make levels that were closer to more modern Zelda games in terms of complexity. It was a video by the YouTuber Game Maker's Toolkit that finally gave me the inspiration I needed to make this algorithm. In his videos about analyzing the Zelda dungeons, he started graphing them out and drawing their critical paths. And that's what made me start to think, well, why not start with a predefined critical path that the dungeon is then loosely built around? I think that approach provides a good mix of random generation and designer input. So that's the basis of the algorithm I came up with. So this is what I mean by a pre-made critical path. It's just an image file, 48 by 48 pixel canvas. You've got a start room, you've got the boss room, and the red path represents the progression through the dungeon. So let's see this in action. So here in Unity, we can see I've got the simple critical path loaded up, and I've got my map generator here, and without further ado, let's just see it in action. Make that screen a little bigger. And as we can see, our randomly generated dungeon rather. So we see the critical path that's represented here with these red cubes. We have the map layout, and we've got some locks and keys as well. There's no actual gameplay, functionality here. They just represent where the keys would spawn, where the locks would spawn, stuff like that. So we start down here in this big room, make our way up, and as we can see, we actually have a red key here. So we would, discover a red key, maybe solve a puzzle, use it to access this door, get the green key. Oh, I can access that. Now we've got our blue key. Backtrack a little bit, bring it back here, and now we can access the boss key. And with that, and this blue surrounding thing, it just implies that the blue key is necessary in some way. Like maybe this is in a chest that requires the blue key, something like that. Since this boss key shares a room with this red one, it's just kind of indicates which key is meant to be gotten first. This guy has no prerequisite, so you get it first. And with that, we would make our way to the boss and fight it. And yeah, so that's basically the level generator. So this map is kind of a neat one, I think. It showcases some of the weirdness that can come from this level generator. So we'll start down here. As usual, we'll get our cyan key, use it to open the cyan locks, and as you can see, we're actually just in the boss room already. Which is, that's a little weird, right? We didn't get the boss key. We didn't get hardly anything really. And yet we're in the boss room. So as I'm building this algorithm, it's all right, is this a problem? Is this something that needs to be fixed? And honestly, no, I don't think it is. Now, I'll get into this a little bit later. I was under a fair bit of time crunch finishing this. I'll explain why later, but if I had wanted to fix this, I must admit I'm not sure if I would have been able to, given the time. But I honestly think that this is more of a happy accident than anything else, because we can actually see in other Zelda dungeons, in actual Zelda dungeons, like this one. This is the water temple. It's not actually called the water temple, but I can't remember what its actual name is. This is from Twilight Princess, and this central room is one that we visit several times throughout the game, or throughout the dungeon, and all the while you're kind of staring down the entrance to the boss room, and that creates an interesting feeling. It's like a feeling of suspense, and I like the idea that this randomly generated level can really easily just kind of create that already. Um, it kind of emulates a real Zelda dungeon feel, I think, by allowing stuff like this. Now, like, how would that actually work in practice? Maybe there's like an elevator here. Maybe this represents an elevator. You get the key, unlocks the elevator, allows you to go down to the actual boss room. Maybe it's something along those lines. Um, we'll go a little bit further, leaving the boss room. Pick up our yellow key, may as well. And this room is another instance of a little bit of weirdness, right? So like just this bare bones kind of layout, it looks like you could grab the green key without accessing really any of this right portion. So, and that's kind of the limitation of this current project. It is just the layout. The actual room layout, the room layout generation, I was not able to get to. But I think we can imagine like this green key. Well, maybe this room would end up actually partitioned, right? So we've got a bit of a wall between them, and the room just kind of decides like, all right, we'll split this into basically two sub rooms. It'll allow the player to see that there is a key on the other side and that we need to return at some point. But that's one way to do it. Another way to do it is kind of a staple of the 2D Zelda games. This is A Link to the Past, and as we can see, like we're in one room, but there are multiple levels of verticality here. This is the ground floor. This is kind of the the upper floor. And, this is another way that, like, the room might partition itself in such a way that you can't just enter from this side and get every bit of loot in the room. In theory. Now, that would rely on the room generator, of course. Whereas this is just the layout generator. But, yeah, so, well, we've got our yellow key, grab our red key, go up over here, grab our green key, backtrack back into this room a little bit, grab our blue key, and with that, finally, our black key, go backtrack a little bit, and that's another neat thing about, like, Zelda dungeons, is they usually have a little bit of backtracking, and again, this method of generating them just kind of organically creates that a lot of the time. This little thing, I don't know if you've noticed, this is intentional. So the room actually, like the lock and key structure, it actually starts from the end and works its way back to the beginning. So, like, we start here, we know that we're in the boss room, and we know that we need to generate a boss door. Or do we? Because this room actually has several openings, and it can be accessed a lot earlier than you might expect. So there's not really any point in generating a dedicated boss door. At least that was my reasoning. There are more layouts, of course, than just that simple one. I'll load up this slightly more complex critical path. We'll see what that looks like. This one kind of winds around itself, it intersects with itself a lot, and it ends up creating some pretty interesting little levels. And I'll just generate a few. We can look at the different shapes they take on. And, of course, this would probably end up feeling a little bit similar after several playthroughs, several runs. But, the layout is a fair bit different. The rooms would be a fair bit different. And it's just a really neat way, I think, to make some nice procedural Zelda-esque dungeons. And they're super easy to edit, super easy to make new critical paths. I'll just do it here. Why not? Rid of that real quick. And it can actually handle branching paths as well. So we'll branch off the start here a little bit. And branching from these other little places as well. And there we go. We see the new little critical path we made just now. That's another nice benefit, I think, of this approach. It's very user friendly. Very easy to go in and just make a new layout. We've got some stats over here. Let's see if fiddling with these a little bit makes for more interesting stuff. Kinda, actually. Certain stats work better with certain layouts, I think, or certain paths. So in this last little bit, I'm going to go over some of the struggles I faced. Unfortunately, the first map generating algorithm I tried to make took the majority of the 2 weeks, first of all, and also I realized too late that I was barking up the wrong tree. This just is not working how I would like. And so yeah, I restarted. Well, not totally restarted, but I pretty much almost restarted pretty late into this project. The functioning version I've been showing off, I've only been working on that for 4 days maybe. So I'll show off this version real quick, because it was neat. It had some neat ideas. I just couldn't quite get there. So this one takes in the critical path, and it generates rooms, and it looks at the openings that are needed for the room. So right, left, up, down, sometimes multiple of a single side. And sometimes, with this layout, it's very random, and some rooms connect back to each other. This room connects back to itself. And, I can't really predefine that, right? These are all predefined shapes. It's kind of like the path in that sense. It's just an image file that defines the walls and openings and whatnot. But with this, it has to connect back to itself. Well, I can't really reasonably predefine a bunch of rooms that will do that will fit into any given possible shape. So I got some pathfinding here from the opening to the opening. I've got a room formed around that, which, as you can see, it's slightly bugged. This whole thing is slightly bugged. And this is where I left off, because it's just like what am I doing? This algorithm is so overcomplicated at this point. Towards the end, it was just an absolute bear to work with to try to add anything more. So I cut my losses. I started over. And I got something that I'm actually pretty proud of, especially given, the very limited time frame I had towards the end. It's a shame this didn't work. It was a really neat learning experience, if nothing else, because, I had never worked with the Unity custom asset importer, so that was neat. I got to, define my own little .room files and just define, the walls, the openings, stuff like that. So, yeah, that was... The struggles really kind of ended up defining the project towards the end, so I figured that I should cover those. So yeah, this is my submission for the technical design track at FIEA, a Zelda dungeon layout generator. This is a lot of fun to work on, and thank you very much for your consideration. I hope you have a good one.